A very good afternoon. I'm Naveen Raj from OISD, Oil Industry Safety Directorate. First of all, I congratulate Mr. Mandal and Mr. James for a very nice presentation, and both are very interrelated. Mr. Mandal has given the two case studies. Now my question based on the Mr. Mandal's presentation is to Mr. James. Mr. Mandal has said that in case of Erica, it was a heavy oil and where the waste has increased by 10%. Whereas in case of BP, it was only 0.3%. And basically what he assigned that it is because of the use of, perhaps one of the factor was using the dispersants. How do you see by your expertise in dispersants, if it has been used in case of Erica, whether it was a little heavy oil? How could have been reduced the waste?
Testing. Okay. So first of all, I think Erica has been a pretty old incident. So that happened probably around 20 years before. So it's very hard. It's very hard at this point of time to comment on the potential outcomes if this person was used instead. But generally, I mean, if after you carry out NEBA or SEMA and among the stakeholders that the shared value is to protect the shorelines from potential impacts of oil, and I think, and of course through a structured process and a discussion, you have identified dispersant application as a suitable response strategy, and you've put in control measures to limit the overuse of dispersants, and I think that will make a very good response strategy, and definitely it can reduce the amount of oil that's hitting the shoreline. So for Erica, I mean, it's probably quite a heavy crude, so you probably have to conduct some tests, but in generally, anything that's beyond 10,000 centistokes, I think that's a general guideline for everyone. It will be difficult for the dispersants to be effective on that oil. So that's my comment. I hope I've answered your questions.
Yeah, thank you. Partially you have answered my question, but it's a question is whether it depends upon the various kind of, when we say the preparedness, we are having the dispersants, but it's basically the oil which is being spilled and the characteristics of that oil, which is very clear from these two cases. If it is a lighter oil, your dispersants and everything is very, very effective and your outcome is very good. But in case of heavy oil, dispersions and all itself is a difficult task. So in that case, do we need to go for other strategies, or the dispersant still will be useful at that time? Because using a dispersants is already a question mark. In the morning also we heard the director offshore, he said, the dispersants, quality of dispersants, that is big questions is being raised after this Macondo accident. So whether these dispersants can be made that it is useful, one type of dispersant for different characteristics of oil spilled, whether it can be useful or not.
So maybe I should start answering this question from the start of SEMA. So if you think about SEMA, we talk about the few stages from stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. So from stage 1 is the part where you gather the data and identify a representative scenario. So of course for oil production companies, also for those who have operations with known oil, you'll be able to, at the first stage, identify a representative scenario that represents your risk. And then with that scenario, you with the help of oil spill modeling trajectory, your EISI mapping, so you will be able to understand, in case the oil spills, what is the potential impacts. And from that scenario, you think about what are the response strategies that is suitable. And when it comes to suitability, I think it's within the context of the local stakeholders. So it's really based on the shared values of of the stakeholders in that community. So what's suitable for India, for example, may not be suitable for other countries like Australia, Japan, etc., because you have your unique shared values. So with that, you will be able to, after you identify the response strategies, and definitely I would say that dispersant application is not going to be one of them, not the only one of them, at least there will be a couple more, because you might not have, there might be limitations in terms of capability, limitations in terms of the quantity, the quality, like you mentioned earlier. So it's always good to have different strategies in your pocket. So having dispersant application requirements doesn't mean that you should not have capability for at-sea containment and recovery. So I think it's always good to have a variety of options. So in case one doesn't work, you will be able to choose another one.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, anybody else? Yeah, Mr. Ray.
I have a question for
Excuse
Mr.
me.
James.
Sorry, may I come in?
Yeah, please, Mr. Ray.
Thank you, sir. First of all, thanks to all the presentation for excellent presentations. My question is for James. For the shoreline protection, as we have seen that spill in any case reaches to the shore, then the mock drills that we are conducting, do we conduct as per OSRL, do we conduct mock drill for shoreline protection also? In the deep sea, we are conducting for the booms, skimmers, whatever you are using. In what way you are conducting for the shoreline protection mock drills?
I was trying to look for you. So hi, over there. So as a general guideline, I think there's specific conditions for using dispersant application. So you have to be sufficiently far away from shore, and at the same time, there must be sufficient depth for the oil droplets to be diluted into the large water body so that it doesn't cause any harm to the immediate microorganisms. So I think these are the two considerations if you were to apply dispersants, and definitely not near the shoreline, and definitely at areas where there's sufficient depth for dilution to take place. Yeah.
So it can be applied only away from the shoreline, right? Never at the shoreline, right?
Yes, as a general industry guidance, I would say so. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, please.
My question is to Mr. James. Regarding OSDs, we know these are chemical dispersants, and they have their own shelf life. And over a period of time, these OSDs are meant to expire also. May I know, are these OSDs, after their expiry of shelf life, whether they are treated still as hazardous wastes, or how do we dispose them of?
Good question.
So I just had to say that I'm not the expert in this area. So if I answered wrongly, I mean, I would give you back the answer. But I think for at least oil spill dispersants, if you do store it well in certain conditions, I don't think they expire in a sense, because what should have been done is that you would regularly send them for testing, and based on the manufacturer's recommendation, of course, you would then assess their effectiveness, and the manufacturer will actually give you guidance on whether that's effective or not. So, yeah. So in the case that it's recommended by is mentioned by the manufacturer that is no longer effective and you want to dispose it, I have not yet come across this question, this scenario at this point of time. But what I can help you to do is, I can go back to my experts within the company. We have plenty of subject matter experts on dispersants within OSRL. I could help you get some answers from that. So I think, apologies for not being able to answer your questions at this point of time, but I do take your questions and I can follow up with you on that.
Oil Spill India 2022 is dedicated to the Honorable Prime Minister's Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and Clean Seas.